difference where after you spent 2 years in a program and you were recovered for 2 years and you went out, and then the next time you came into recovery through a spiritual program, now you've been sober for 24 years. What was the difference? Well, longevity, for one. I think this is all in expression and in manifestation in time and stuff as an action figure, but the density of denial hadn't been broken through. Like the thick shell, it wasn't getting really pierced yet. Even though I had been subdued for 2 years, there was no program of what you would call a quote-unquote spiritual program. It was more behavior modification. So it was just sort of polishing the shell a little bit, yeah? But it wasn't piercing the shell. So the denseness of mind and of denial and all those deep waters were going unseen. And they were just latently ready to blow, you know? As soon as the circumstantial dam was removed, the program, back alone with the parasite, so to speak, of alcoholism, I was an easy prey. It took me over again, and then I had a 10-month run, which is a weird terminology, because if you've ever been on a run, that's meaning you're doing drugs and alcohol again. It starts out as a run, but you're walking gingerly after a few weeks, you know? And after a while, you're limping, usually. Then you're crawling, and then you're dragged back to what we call a pitiful, incomprehensibly demoralized state. And that's what it was like. Now, the next time, after those 10 months, I talked about before about the grace that broke through the denial. That grace got through the shell. And once it hit the inside, that's where the real growth occurred. Instead of trying to break through the shell, the inside broke out of the shell. Yeah? And that was a total different movement. So instead of just being subdued and, let's say, caged with all that potential ready to run amok, the foundation of that running amok was eroded from the below, yeah? From a convincing and a surrender. And it was just, it would seem like the same actions, but the results and the expression were totally different. The mind had changed, yeah. So that was the huge difference in it. The other one just polished the shell, didn't break through. It felt like you were encased. The thought system was very thick, and maybe there was light that could come through, but it was moving through, let's say, 80 layers of saran wrap. You could still see the light, but it wasn't really hitting. It was very distorted. When I had the grace occur, a lot of that saran wrap was removed. A lot of it, like a bunch of it. And so the rest of from that point on, it was a whole new ball game. Yeah. Yeah. And one was what you would call a spiritual solution. The other one was basically a circumstantial solution. Stay in an institution. If you stay in the institution, you'll probably be somewhat okay, meaning you won't drink or use. I didn't want to stay in the institution, yet I wasn't equipped to live life on life's terms. See, the real problem for me wasn't drinking, it was living sober. It was hard to be conscious because of what I was conscious of, which was a lot of thoughts and ideas and situations that I felt quite guilty about. It was an unbearable burden to travel like that, so you would do almost anything to get relief. Until that was healed in a way, or until that was held or managed by a different team, a different managerial team, so that stuff could come into the light and then be reconfigured. My only solution was just to keep packing it down, you know? And I did that by avoiding it, by getting loaded. At the end, when I was getting loaded, it wasn't partying. It had lost that terminology a long time ago. It was a job. I had to stay loaded. Because if I wasn't loaded, when I was conscious, what I became conscious of was way too much. You know, the weight of my behaviors and like that, from how I was looking at it, was too much. I would do almost anything to avoid that, and I did. So I needed a giant intervention, and it wasn't like a physical or a human one. I needed some other kind of intervention, which the program recovery supplied. And but I would say in the story of Paul that polishing the shell was important, because I needed to be socialized again. I couldn't really live out there. So they kept me in a place for 2 years, and I actually thrived in an institution. I did pretty good in there. Yeah. And I learned a very big principle, which is I learned after I left that I didn't like those people nor the principles they had in that program, but I had to admit begrudgingly that my life looked better with them running it than it ever did with me running it. And that was a big event in my head, to realize that any life run on self-will would be unsuccessful in my case. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't really like these people, but I had to admit that it looked better with them telling me what to do than it ever did me telling me what to do. So that was like almost like a kindergarten, and then I got advanced into another stage of recovery, which was more suitable. It's worked now for 24 years. So.